Commander Cax stood in front of the large screen, his four eyes blinking rapidly as he read the mission details again. The tall, gray-skinned alien could not believe what he was seeing. His mercenary company had faced many enemies across the galaxy, but this was different. This time, they would be fighting humans. "Sir, is something wrong?" asked one of his officers. The commander's unusual silence had made everyone in the briefing room nervous. "We are being hired to face Earth's special forces," Cax said slowly. "Specifically, something called Ghost Team, led by Captain Jiho Park." The room fell silent. Every mercenary had heard stories about Earth and its warriors. Their planet was classified as a death world, a place where most alien species would die within hours. High gravity, extreme temperatures, dangerous predators, and powerful storms had shaped humans into something unique. "But sir," spoke Du Young, their tactical analyst, and one of the few humans who had joined their ranks, "Ghost Team is not just any special forces unit. They are the best Earth has to offer." Du Young walked to the front of the room and pulled up several images on the screen. They showed soldiers moving through impossible terrain, fighting in conditions that would kill most species, and succeeding against overwhelming odds. "I left Earth years ago," Du Young continued, "but I remember the stories. Ghost Team once survived 3 weeks in an Arctic environment that would freeze most aliens solid. They completed their mission without losing a single member." Commander Cax watched his mercenaries shift uncomfortably in their seats. They were the best fighters money could buy, armed with advanced weapons and protected by powerful shields. But something about these humans made them nervous. "What makes them so special?" asked a young mercenary from the back of the room. Du Young smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Imagine being born on a planet that tries to kill you every day, where the gravity is so strong that you develop bones like steel and muscles that can tear through metal, where your body learns to survive in both freezing cold and burning heat." He pointed to a video playing on the screen. It showed Captain Jiho Park's team moving through a burning building as if the flames weren't there. "Humans don't just survive in conditions that would kill us. They thrive in them. And Ghost Team, they are the best of the best." Commander Cax raised his hand, silencing the worried whispers that had filled the room. "The client is paying us triple our usual rate," he announced. "They know what we're going up against. But remember, we have better technology, better weapons, and better ships." "With respect, sir," Du Young interrupted. "Ghost Team once captured an enemy cruiser using nothing but handheld weapons and their environmental suits. Technology isn't always enough." The commander looked at the image of Captain Jiho Park on the screen. The human looked small compared to most species, but there was something in his eyes that made even Cax uncomfortable. It was the look of someone who had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived. "We have our orders," Cax said firmly. "In 3 days, we move against the mining colony on Nexus Prime. If Ghost Team is there, we will show them that we are the best mercenary company in the galaxy." As the briefing ended and his troops filed out, Commander Cax kept staring at the screen. In all his years of fighting, he had never seen his soldiers so worried about facing an enemy. Perhaps there was a reason why human special forces had such a frightening reputation. Du Young stayed behind, organizing his data files. "Sir," he said quietly, "there's an old saying on Earth. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Cax didn't understand the reference, but he got the message. This mission would not be like any other they had faced before, and somewhere out there, Captain Jiho Park and his Ghost Team were waiting for them. The mining colony on Nexus Prime was quiet in the early morning hours. Commander Cax led his best platoon through the dark streets, their advanced stealth systems making them nearly invisible. According to their information, the colony's defense systems were minimal. It should have been an easy mission. "All teams, report," Cax whispered into his communication device. "Team 1 in position. Team 2 ready. Team 3 at the target." Everything was going according to plan. Their client wanted the colony's valuable mineral storage, and Cax's mercenaries were the best in the business at taking what others wanted. They had done this hundreds of times before. Lieutenant Haynul watched them from the shadows of a nearby building. The human officer smiled slightly as he counted the enemy forces through his thermal visor. The aliens thought their stealth systems could hide them, but they didn't understand how well humans could adapt to hunting in darkness. Ghost Lead, this is Scout 1. Haynul whispered into his communicator. 23 targets, moving in standard assault formation. Their tech is good, but they're not watching the high ground. Captain Jaho Park's voice came back calm and clear. Understood. Team, execute Plan Thunder. Haynul touched a small device on his belt, and suddenly the colony's artificial gravity increased by 3 times. To humans from Earth, it was uncomfortable but manageable. To the alien mercenaries, it was like being crushed by an invisible hand. Cax felt his legs buckle under the sudden weight. Around him, his soldiers collapsed to the ground, their advanced armor now working against them. Through his pain, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Footsteps coming toward them at a running pace. 4 shadows moved through the streets. Despite the crushing gravity, they moved as if they were taking a casual walk. Their environmental suits were simple compared to the mercenaries' expensive armor, but they didn't seem to need anything more. Contact, one of Cax's soldiers managed to say before a human hand grabbed him and threw him through the air like he weighed nothing. The alien crashed into 2 of his companions, all 3 of them falling unconscious. Haynul moved like water through the mercenary formation. His enhanced muscles, developed on Earth's powerful gravity, made him incredibly strong even by human standards. He disabled 3 more mercenaries before they could raise their weapons. Sir, Du Young's voice crackled over the comm system. You need to retreat. They're using your own weight against you. The gravity. The tactical analyst's warning cut off as Captain Jaho Park himself appeared from nowhere, moving with impossible speed in the heavy gravity. His hands moved in a blur, disabling weapons and armor systems with precise strikes. Commander Cax watched in horror as his elite platoon was systematically taken apart by just 4 humans. They moved like predators, using the enhanced gravity to their advantage, throwing mercenaries into each other and destroying expensive equipment with their bare hands. How? Cax gasped as Jaho Park approached him. Our armor, our weapons. The human captain looked down at him, and Cax saw the same predator's eyes he had noticed in the briefing room images. We grew up on a world 3 times heavier than this, Jaho said simply. Your technology is impressive, but our bodies evolved to survive much worse. Within 5 minutes, it was over. 23 of the galaxy's most expensive mercenaries lay defeated, their advanced equipment useless against warriors evolved on a Deathworld. None of them were killed, but their pride would never recover. Later, in the safety of their ship, Commander Cax watched the battle recordings with his officers. The images showed something that would give them nightmares. Humans moving through crushing gravity, as if it was nothing, dismantling a professional military force with casual ease. Sir, one of his officers said quietly, the client won't be happy. Cax couldn't take his eyes off the screen, watching Jaho Park's team disappear into the shadows after the fight. Tell the client that Ghost Team doesn't just have a reputation. They've earned it. And get me everything we have on human special forces. We need to understand what we're really fighting against. Du Young sat in the darkened command center of the mercenary ship, his eyes fixed on multiple screens displaying combat footage from their failed mission. As the tactical analyst for the mercenary company, he had the difficult task of explaining to Commander Cax exactly why they had been defeated so thoroughly. Play the gravity shift moment again, Cax ordered, his 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The screen showed the moment when Lieutenant Haynul activated the gravity device, and the entire mercenary platoon collapsed. This is where we made our first mistake, Du Young explained, pointing to the footage. We relied too heavily on our advanced armor. On most worlds, it gives us an advantage. But against humans, It became a weakness. When the gravity increased, the armor's weight crushed our troops. Commander Cax nodded slowly, but the humans moved freely. How is this possible? Do Young pulled up an image of Earth on the main screen. This is where humans evolved. The gravity on Earth is much stronger than most habitable planets. Their bones are denser, their muscles more powerful. What feels crushing to us feels normal to them. The footage continued playing, showing Ghost Team moving through the enhanced gravity field. Du Young pointed to specific moments in the combat. Notice how they use minimal equipment. Their environmental suits are simple, light, and efficient. They don't need heavy armor because their bodies are naturally armored. The commander watched as the video showed Captain Jaho Park disabling 3 mercenaries with precise strikes. Their combat style is different too, he observed. Yes, Du Young agreed. Humans develop thousands of fighting styles on Earth. They learn to use an opponent's strength against them. In that gravity field, our heavy armor made us slow and predictable. They used our own weight to defeat us. A new officer entered the command center, carrying data tablets. "Sir, we've analyzed their environmental suits," she reported. "They're designed to work in conditions that would kill most species. Extreme heat, crushing cold, toxic atmospheres. They can survive almost anywhere." Commander Cax took the tablets, studying the information carefully. How do we fight an enemy that treats deadly environments as a minor inconvenience? Do Young brought up more footage, this time showing Ghost Team's movements before the attack. We need to change our approach completely. First, we must understand that humans don't think like other species. On their world, they were not the strongest or fastest creatures. They survived by adapting, by outsmarting stronger predators. The tactical analyst highlighted several moments where Ghost Team had set up their trap. See how they used the colony's infrastructure against us. They didn't just increase the gravity. They predicted exactly how we would respond. They turned our strengths into weaknesses. Commander Cax stood up and walked closer to the main screen. Then we need new strategies, different weapons, better tactics. It's not that simple, Du Young warned. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. If we develop new weapons, they will find ways to counter them. If we change our tactics, they will adapt. This is what they do best. The commander turned to face his tactical analyst. You're human. You understand how they think. Help us develop a plan that will work. Du Young looked at the screen, watching Captain Jaho Park's efficient movements one more time. I can help you understand them better, sir. But understanding humans and defeating them are two very different things. Ghost Team isn't just a military unit. They represent humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn any situation to their advantage. Commander Cax looked at his gathered officers, seeing the concern on their faces. Then we start now. Analyze every piece of footage. Study every tactic. We need to be ready for our next encounter with Ghost Team. As the officers left to begin their work, Du Young remained behind, still watching the combat footage. He knew that no amount of analysis would fully prepare them for their next encounter with human special forces. After all, humans had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for exactly this kind of challenge. The frontier world of Nexus Prime stretched out below the mercenary fleet. Commander Cax had brought everything this time. 3 battleships, 500 troops, and enough firepower to level a small city. He would not underestimate the humans again. All ships report ready, his bridge officer announced. Ground teams are in position. Commander Cax nodded. Begin the operation. Remember your training. Do not engage the humans in close combat. Keep your distance and use superior firepower. On the planet below, Commander Songmin of the human forces watched the mercenary ships through powerful telescopes. His weathered face showed no emotion as he assessed their numbers. They brought an army to fight a handful of special forces, he said quietly. Good. Captain Jaho Park stood beside him, checking his simple but effective combat gear. They learned from last time. They won't let us get close easily. Songmin smiled. Then we won't get close. Lieutenant Henule, show them why humans excel at asymmetric warfare. Deep in the mining colony's industrial sector, Henule and his team had spent 3 days preparing the battlefield. They had studied how these alien mercenaries fought, how they moved, and most importantly, how they thought. The humans had set up their defenses accordingly. The first wave of mercenaries landed in the colony's main square. They moved cautiously, their weapons ready, scanning for any sign of human activity. Their new lightweight armor allowed them to move faster, and they stayed in open areas where they could see any approaching threats. No sign of Ghost Team, reported a mercenary squad leader, moving to secure the administration building. Commander Cax watched from his command ship, feeling confident. His forces had the advantage of numbers and firepower. They had learned from their previous encounter. Then the colony's atmospheric processors activated. Thick, heavy fog rolled through the streets. The mercenaries' visual sensors struggled to penetrate it. Then came the sounds. Echoing footsteps, mechanical noises, and strange whispers that seemed to come from all directions. "Keep formation," ordered the squad leader. "They're trying to confuse us. Stay together and—" His words cut off as explosive charges detonated throughout the industrial sector. But they weren't meant to kill. Instead, they released clouds of metal particles into the air. The mercenaries' advanced targeting systems went blind, overwhelmed by thousands of false readings. "They're hunting us," a mercenary whispered into his comm unit, "using our own technology against us." Commander Songmin's voice echoed through hidden speakers across the colony. "Your equipment is impressive," he said calmly, "but humans learned to fight before we had technology. We learned to hunt when we were prey ourselves. Now we're the predators." The mercenaries tried to regroup, but the humans had studied their tactics. Every escape route led to another trap. Every defensive position became a killing zone. Ghost Team never engaged directly. They struck from shadows, disappeared into the fog, and struck again from another direction. From his command ship, Commander Cax watched in horror as his superior force was systematically dismantled by an enemy they couldn't even see. "This is impossible," he muttered. "We have every advantage." Do Young, standing behind him, shook his head. "No, sir. We only thought we did. Humans don't fight the way other species do. They don't try to match strength with strength. They find weaknesses and exploit them. They turn advantages into disadvantages." By the time the fog cleared, 300 mercenaries had surrendered. The rest had retreated in disorder. Not a single human casualty was reported. In the colony's control center, Commander Songmin and Captain Jaho Park watched the mercenary ships withdraw. "They'll be back," Jaho said. "They'll try to learn from this too." Songmin nodded. "Let them learn. Every time they adapt, we'll show them something new. That's what humans do best. We evolve, we adapt, we overcome. It's how we survived Earth. And it's how we'll survive out here among the stars." The abandoned space station hung silently in the darkness of space. Its long corridors and empty rooms made perfect hiding places. Commander Cax believed he had finally trapped Ghost Team inside this metal maze. 3 days ago, Captain Jaho Park and his team had taken refuge here after raiding a mercenary supply depot. "All exits are sealed," reported a mercenary officer. "We have teams at every airlock. They cannot escape." Commander Cax studied the station's layout on his command screen. "Begin the search. Teams of 10. Stay together. Remember your training." Inside the station, Captain Jaho Park watched the mercenaries through the security cameras. His team had spent their 3 days preparing the station, just as they had prepared the mining colony. "They never learn," he said quietly. "They think they've trapped us." Lieutenant Henule checked his equipment one last time. "Should we show them who's really trapped?" Jaho nodded. "Disable the artificial gravity in sections B through F. Let's see how well they fight in zero gravity." The mercenaries had just entered Section B when the gravity disappeared. Their magnetic boots kept them from floating away, but their movements became slow and clumsy. They had trained for zero-gravity combat, but not like humans had. "Movement!" shouted a mercenary. Above us, two humans in lightweight environmental suits pushed off the ceiling, moving through the zero-gravity space like they were born to it. Before the mercenaries could aim their weapons, Haynul and his partner had disabled half the team. In another section, more mercenaries faced a different problem. The gravity increased to 3 times normal, then switched to 0, then back again. The random changes made it impossible to fight effectively. But the humans moved through it all with practiced ease. "How are they doing this?" demanded Commander Cax, watching the chaos through security feeds. "Every team is being picked apart." Do Young, monitoring the situation from the command ship, understood exactly what was happening. "Sir, humans train for space combat by swimming underwater on Earth. Their bodies naturally understand how to move in 3 dimensions. Most species have to learn this. Humans evolved with it. The mercenaries try to adapt, but the humans were always one step ahead. When teams went dark, backup teams found them unconscious, their equipment disabled. When they tried to use thermal imaging, the humans flooded sections with heat from the station's old reactor. When they switched to motion sensors, the humans used the station's waste disposal system to create hundreds of false readings. "Fall back to the main hub," Cax ordered. "Regroup and..." The station's lights went out. Emergency power failed. Communications became garbled. In the darkness, mercenary teams heard footsteps on the walls, on the ceiling, all around them. "They're not trapped here with us," whispered a mercenary soldier, remembering something he had heard about humans. "We're trapped here with them." The next few hours became a nightmare for the mercenary forces. Ghost Team appeared and disappeared at will, using their lifetime of experience with Earth's oceans to move perfectly in zero gravity. They knew every trick for fighting in space because their ancestors had learned similar skills hunting in deep water. When the lights finally came back on, Commander Cax found his forces in complete disarray. 30 of his best troops had been disabled without a single shot fired. The humans had used the station itself as a weapon, turning the mercenaries' unfamiliarity with 3-dimensional combat against them. From the safety of his command ship, Cax watched Captain Jai-Ho Park's team calmly exit the station through an airlock everyone had thought was broken. The humans had never been trapped. They had chosen this battlefield carefully, knowing exactly how to use it to their advantage. "Send a message to all mercenary companies in the sector," Cax ordered. "Mark this station as off-limits. In fact, mark any abandoned station as a potential death trap if humans are involved. They don't just adapt to different environments. They turn those environments into weapons." Commander Cax sat alone in his private quarters, reading through personal logs recovered from previous battles. After several defeats, he had ordered his intelligence team to gather any information they could find about human special forces. They had found something unexpected: a personal diary from Sergeant Yunji, a veteran human special forces operator. "Day 457 of deployment," Cax read aloud. "Spent 6 hours in the acid rain today. Our suits held up fine. Some of the new recruits complained, but I reminded them about our training on Earth. We once spent 2 weeks in the Arctic with minimal gear. This is nothing compared to that." The commander picked up another data pad. This one contained intercepted communications between Ghost Team members during their last mission. "The aliens don't understand us," Captain Jai-Ho Park had said in one recording. "They think our strength comes from our muscles, our bones, our ability to survive harsh conditions. But that's not what makes us dangerous. It's our minds. It's our will to survive." Do Young entered the commander's quarters, carrying more data files. "Sir, I've analyzed the combat recordings as you requested." Cax looked up from the diary. "Tell me what you found." "Look at this," Du Young said, playing a video on the main screen. It showed Lieutenant Haynul fighting in the space station. "See how he moves. He's not just reacting. He's thinking several steps ahead. Every move has a purpose." The commander watched closely. Like a predator. No, Du Yum corrected. Like a survivor. Humans weren't the strongest or fastest on Earth. We survived because we could outthink our predators. We learned to use tools, to work together, to plan ahead. They watched more footage, this time showing ghost teams' training exercises. The humans deliberately practiced in the worst conditions they could find. Extreme heat, crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres. This is from Sergeant Yunji's personal files. Du Yum explained. They don't train to be comfortable in harsh conditions. They train to think clearly when everything goes wrong. It's not about being tough. It's about staying smart when others panic. Commander Cax picked up another datapad. Listen to this communication from their last mission. Lieutenant Haynul says, remember the mountain training. When you think you've reached your limit, you're only at 40% of what you can actually do. That's the key to understanding humans. Du Yum said, we evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill us, not just the gravity or the weather, but everything. We had to become problem solvers just to survive. Every human carries that legacy. The commander stood and walked to his viewport, staring at the stars. In all my years as a mercenary, I've never faced an enemy like this. We adapt our tactics, they find new ways to defeat us. We improve our technology. They turn it against us. Because that's what humans do best. Du Yum explained. We don't just adapt to survive. We take whatever tries to kill us and learn to use it as a weapon. That's why Earth's special forces are so feared. They've mastered this ability. Cax turned back to his tactical analyst. Then how do we defeat them? That's the wrong question, sir, Du Yum said quietly. The right question is, how do we survive them? Because every time you fight humans, they learn. They adapt. They become stronger. It's not just their bodies that evolved on a death world. It's their entire way of thinking. The commander looked again at Sergeant Yunji's diary. The last entry read, they call Earth a death world. They think it made us strong. But it did something far more dangerous. It taught us to never give up, never stop thinking, never stop adapting. That's what makes us truly dangerous. Commander Cax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his entire mercenary fleet moved into position around the human military installation. After months of preparation and countless resources spent, he believed they had finally developed effective countermeasures against Ghost Team. All ships report ready, his bridge officer announced. Ground forces are prepared for deployment. New anti-gravity armor is functioning perfectly. The commander nodded. Begin the assault. Remember, no close combat. Keep your distance. Use the new wide-area stun weapons. Don't give them any chance to adapt. On the surface of the planet below, Lieutenant Ta Hyun watched the mercenary fleet through high-powered binoculars. As Ghost Team's heavy weapons expert, he had spent the past week preparing for this moment. They brought their entire fleet. He reported to Captain Jai-Ho Park, just as we expected. Jai-Ho studied the tactical display showing enemy positions. They think they've learned all our tricks. Time to show them some new ones. The mercenary assault began with precision strikes from orbit. Their new weapons were designed specifically to counter human advantages. Gravity neutralizers, sonic disruptors, and neural suppressors that should have incapacitated any living being. But the humans were not where the mercenaries expected them to be. No life signs in the target zones, reported a mercenary scanner operator. The base appears empty. Commander Cax felt a chill run down his spine. Check the underground levels. Now, before his troops could respond, the ground beneath their landing zones began to shift. The humans had spent weeks hollowing out the terrain, creating a vast network of artificial sinkholes. As the ground collapsed, mercenary troops found themselves falling into deep pits. Activate magnetic boots, ordered a squad leader, but the walls of the pits were lined with electromagnetic disruptors. Nothing worked as it should. Lieutenant Ta Hyun's voice echoed through hidden speakers. You studied how we fight in space. Did you forget we evolved on a planet? Underground caves were humanity's first shelters. We know how to use them. The mercenaries tried to regroup, but years of fighting humans had taught Ghost Team exactly how they would react. Every fallback position had been compromised. Every escape route led to another trap. From his command ship, Commander Cax watched in growing horror as his carefully planned assault fell apart. Launched the combat drones. All of them. Hundreds of automated combat machines filled the sky. They were immune to gravity changes, couldn't be tricked by false heat signatures, and had no fear. The mercenaries had spent fortunes developing them specifically to counter human tactics. Captain Jaho Park's voice came over all communication channels. Impressive machines, but we've had machines longer than you think. We built our first tools when we were still prey animals on Earth. Suddenly, the drones began to fall from the sky. The humans had developed a new type of electromagnetic pulse weapon, one that specifically targeted the drones' control systems. Not only were the machines disabled, but their falling debris created chaos among the mercenary ground forces. Lieutenant Ta Hyun led the counterattack personally. His team emerged from hidden bunkers, wearing simple but effective armor. They moved with deadly precision, using the mercenaries' own fallen drones as cover. "This is impossible," Commander Cax whispered as he watched his forces retreat in disorder. "We planned for everything. We had countermeasures for all their known tactics." Do Young, standing nearby, shook his head. "That's the problem, sir. You planned to fight the humans you knew. But humans never stop evolving, never stop adapting. Every battle teaches them something new. Every victory gives them new ideas." Within hours, the assault had turned into a complete rout. The mercenaries retreated to their ships, leaving behind millions of credits worth of equipment and their reputation as the galaxy's finest fighting force. Commander Cax stood before the Mercenary Guild Council, his posture straight despite his recent defeats. The council chamber was silent as he presented his final report on encounters with human special forces. "I recommend an immediate change to our combat rating system," Cax stated firmly. "Captain Jaho Park's Ghost Team and all human special forces units should be classified as Omega-level threats. This is the highest possible danger rating." The council members murmured among themselves. One of them, a tall crystalline being, spoke up. "This seems extreme, Commander. They are just one species from one death world." Cax activated the chamber's holographic display system. "Watch this footage, and you will understand." The display showed scenes from their various encounters with Ghost Team. The council watched in silence as human special forces operators demonstrated their capabilities. They saw humans fighting in crushing gravity, moving through space as if they were born to it, and turning hostile environments into weapons. "This is Lieutenant Hainul," Cax explained, showing footage from the space station battle. "He disabled 10 of our best troops in zero gravity without firing a single shot. Our soldiers had trained for space combat. He had lived it." Another scene played, showing Lieutenant Ta Hyun's team during the final battle. "They turned our own advanced combat drones against us. When we developed countermeasures for their tactics, they created new ones. They adapt faster than we can plan." Do Young stepped forward. As a human who had worked with the mercenaries, his perspective was valuable. "You're not just fighting their bodies or their technology," he told the council. "You're fighting millions of years of evolution on a world that tried to kill them every day. Every human carries that legacy." The display showed Sergeant Yunji's team operating in environments that would kill most species. "They don't just survive in deadly conditions," Cax continued. "They thrive in them. They use them to their advantage." The council watched as Ghost Team turned toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and dangerous radiation into tactical advantages. They saw how the humans used simple tools and perfect timing to defeat advanced alien technology. Most importantly, Cax said, playing the final footage from their last encounter, "They never stopped learning. Every time we fought them, they became stronger. Every defeat taught them something new. They don't just adapt to survive. They evolve to win." The council chamber remained silent for a long moment after the presentation ended. Finally, the head counselor spoke. "Your recommendation is accepted, Commander. All human Special Forces units will be classified as Omega-level threats. We will update the Mercenary Combat Manual immediately." Later, in his private office, Commander Cax finished writing his final entry in the combat manual. The words would be read by mercenary companies across the galaxy. When facing human Special Forces, remember these crucial points. They are not just soldiers from a death world. They are the ultimate expression of their species' survival instinct. Their technology is not their greatest weapon. Their bodies are not their greatest asset. Their minds, shaped by millions of years of overcoming challenges that would kill most species, are what make them truly dangerous. If you encounter Ghost Team or any human Special Forces unit, do not engage. Retreat immediately and inform the Guild. No amount of payment is worth the risk. They have earned their reputation as the most dangerous warriors in known space. Remember, you are not hunting them. You are surviving them. And survival, above all else, is what humans do best. Captain Jaho Park received a copy of the new combat manual a few weeks later. As he read the Omega-level threat classification, a small smile crossed his face. "They finally understand," he said quietly. "Took them long enough."